looking across our transport fleet, one of the biggest impacts was obviously the number of road miles that we actually drive. So you can eliminate as best you can the road miles, you eliminate the carbon. So we employed a route management system, and we actually managed to achieve around about a 14% improvement in efficiency. So we've got a fairly urban location. The majority of our clients are based in an urban environment, so therefore we can use smaller vehicles. Now, by using smaller vehicles, you might think, well, wait a minute, a small vehicle is less efficient than perhaps a large vehicle that might carry 25 or 26 tonnes. And that is true if you're making your material haul a great distance, but because we're going short distances, our vehicles are actually 4 times more efficient than a large vehicle. So then the next thing we look at is, right, okay, we're using smaller vehicles which are more efficient. What engines are in these smaller vehicles? So we've specified that we would only procure vehicles with an EEV European classification. That's the lowest emissions standard. Then the last thing that we looked at was the use of biodiesel. Now, biodiesel can be quite controversial when you think about where the actual biofuel comes from. So we're very careful in making sure that we sourced sustainable biodiesel. And that's biodiesel that's manufactured from waste oil, from chips, from manufacture of crisps and things like that. So what we do now is we use a B30 blend biodiesel in our vehicles as almost the penultimate straw, if you like, the penultimate step in us trying to eliminate our carbon emissions. And the final thing that we're looking at now is electric vehicles. So we've trialled electric vans. We can't find a problem with them. Most of our vehicles don't do a big mileage in the day because we've got effective route management and we're close to our client base. So there's actually few obstacles stopping us progressing into the electric vehicle market later on this year.
At Vegware, we only use low carbon shipping, and we also are very careful that we manufacture close to ports so as to minimise any unnecessary travel by road. For deliveries within the UK, we use a courier service, so that also just minimises the transport emissions compared to us having our own vehicles and travelling all over the country just to deliver our products. We also track all of our employees' business travel, so everyone every quarter gets told how many grams of carbon they've emitted per kilometre, and then this is put into a league table, and if you are the top of the league table you get a crown photoshopped onto your head and become the carbon king.
One of the things that we have been challenged by is how to make our vehicles greener, and because again we run an outdoor activity business that uses Land Rovers, then it's been difficult to get environmentally friendly vehicles that are fit for purpose. But what we have done is, for our more regular journeys, is invested in a more sustainable vehicle which has the ability of doing 80 miles to the gallon, and it produces only 89 grams per kilometre of CO2 emissions.
We do try to use a local supply chain where possible, as that helps us to reduce our transport impacts and our carbon impacts. We use a piece of software called Astronaut Greener Fleet software. It allows us to actually calculate the miles of each journey that's undertaken within a Graham van. We can then equate this to the CO2 that has been emitted on that journey based on the driver's style, idling time and the specific emissions associated with that vehicle. So this software actually helps us to compile a green score for each journey that we are undertaking within those vehicles. We also have a green travel plan for the site. And that includes initiatives to try to reduce the amount of single occupancy vehicles that are coming to site.
Our biggest environmental aspect is traction, fuel and energy, which takes up about 92% of our carbon footprint. Initially we used the driver simulator to encourage eco-driving. The principle is that you get the train to its destination at the right time using the least amount of fuel. So that will mean having the throttles set properly for that part of the route, which is guided both by our simulator trials, backed up by test runs, and now incorporated in our driver advice systems. But for our electric fleets in particular, where we have a number of runs where coasting is possible, The driver can take his hand off the throttle and allow the gradient or the track to avoid a fuel or an energy input. So that essentially that's on the electric side, but it's incorporated into our diesel units as well.
So we introduced 15 double-deck hybrid buses in 2011 under Scottish Green Bus Fund 1 funding from Transport Scotland. And then we put a further 10 buses in April 2013. We have a further 40 hybrid buses now on order as well. And more than any other development which we've done, the hybrid buses are encouraging people out of their cars and onto buses more than anything else. To help with the engine and the recharging, the bus also features a regenerative braking system. So when the driver applies the foot brake, some of the energy which on a normal bus would be lost as heat is recaptured and converted back to electricity and is used to recharge the batteries on the hybrid. As a result of this, the engine running a lot more efficiently because it's only charging the battery, and also because it's a lot smaller, this vehicle here would typically use between 35 and 40% less fuel than a conventional diesel bus. As well as introducing hybrid vehicles into the fleet, we became very conscious that some of the older buses in our fleet, between, say, 5 and 10 years old, weren't meeting the highest modern emission standards, that equivalent to a brand new bus today. So now 45 of our single deckers have been fitted with these low emission exhausts, which cut NOx pollution by 70% and cut other air pollutants by over 95% each. The impact of our environmentally friendly vehicles has been substantial in the city. As well as the very large environmental savings, we've also seen a significant increase in the number of people using our eco-services, as well as the obvious environmental savings and the fuel savings for the company through using low-emission hybrid vehicles. To get a significant amount of passenger growth in that way, I think is very promising, because it shows that there is an interest among people who perhaps wouldn't traditionally use the bus to switch over from private cars to buses if demonstrably greener travel is provided for them. Of the engineering-related features, we tried alloyed wheels on our hybrids for the first time. Now, alloy wheels are relatively expensive, but we were promised a fuel saving through using them. So what we did for our first batch of buses, the 15 hybrids, we brought 14 with alloy wheels and 1 with steel wheels, so we could compare the fuel efficiency between the two types of wheels on the buses to just check it wasn't really a cosmetic improvement to the vehicles. And it was very interesting because the bus with steel wheels clearly didn't have the fuel efficiency of the buses with alloy wheels, so now we've retrofitted that bus back to alloy wheels, and alloy wheels are being specified on all future deliveries for us. So when taken together, the savings from both the single and double-deck hybrids equate to over 1,200 tonnes per year coming off our annual carbon footprint. And that's a very substantial saving for a company of this size. When you spend a lot of money investing in new fleet, including hybrid vehicles, it's important to make sure that driver training is up to scratch on eco-driving techniques as well. All drivers get training on how to drive the buses in a fuel-efficient and sensitive manner. Techniques would include, for example, anticipating traffic lights so you minimise idling, not over-revving the bus, and not using harsh braking. And they're techniques which you can apply in normal driving of your own car, for example, as well.